Hey guys, how are you? Coming on, good to see you. Let me just get some technical things going. And let me know in the comments how you guys are doing. So I have a request that came up in the survey that if we used the Q&A, wait, no, if we use the chat function, because you guys have a choice between chat and Q&A. If we use the chat function, if we can hit some type of a button that's about, if we can hit some type of a button that says to all panelists, I think, or like the way I see it on my screen is there's a little drop down. You can hit to all panelists or all panelists and attendees. If you hit all panelists and attendees, everyone can see it, and that will make it more social. So the request was that we do that if we can kind of make it a little bit more social, that would be really cool. See, like Teresa, if you guys see, she did to all panelists. I don't know if you guys can see it because I think she has to hit to all panelists and attendees. And so can we try that real quick and see? Yeah, there we go. Okay, we've got a few comments in here that all panelists and attendees. Perfect. So now we can all sort of talk together. Let me just do one more thing. Okay, I think I'm good now with my technical ducks in a row. We've got that on there. Yes, Nancy, just like that. I think you guys, can you guys see each other's comments? There's been like 5 or 6 in there now that are doing that. Okay, perfect. So we got that in order. Now, if you guys want to ask me a question privately, and you want me to answer it on the Q&A private style, so it's kind of like anonymous or whatever, then you can use the Q&A function and make sure you hit the thing that says anonymous or something like that, okay? But otherwise, let's keep all of our kind of social things in this chat to everyone so we can all see it, and then on the other side, we'll do our Q&A if you guys have any specific questions for me. So like always, I'm gonna save Q&A till the end. Feel free to ask questions if you want, even in the chat is fine, or in the Q&A. During this workshop, and then towards the end we'll get to the Q&A. All right, so let's jump into what we have to talk about today. So last week we talked about the model. We talked all about this amazing model: circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. I had such great feedback from you guys about this. I think 22 of you filled out your surveys. Every single one of you loved the model. So I'm so happy to see that. I'm also happy to see that you guys really like the group coaching section of it, because you could kind of see how our issues are kind of all the same. If you really break it down, we kind of all have the same issues. And whenever someone has an issue, watching them be coached can sort of open up things in your mind that maybe you hadn't thought of it that way. So I'm glad you guys really liked that. Your homework for today was to do some thought downloads. I hope, did you guys get to do some of those thought downloads? Let me know in the chat section if you're able to do some of those. And then did you practice some of your models? Were you able to do that? We are going to take that. If you guys want, we can take some volunteers at the end and in the Q&A section, and we kind of can run through some of those. But the first thing I wanted to do was show you a little example of one that happened this past week. Laura, one of our workshop attendees, had emailed me and said that she was talking about her models, and I wanted to read what she said in her email, and she gave me permission to read this because I think it really can show you how just using the model to look at our thoughts can open up things that we hadn't really thought of before. So let's see how this worked in Laura's life. So she said, last week's class was awesome. It was empowering to know that I can have power over my thoughts. And these are 2 examples of thought downloads and what happened, she said. So one time she was thinking about her cats, and she said, kitten is loud. Her fur is so soft. So she's noticing that she's, noticing things about her cat. Then she says, I got up and went to do a stretching video. She thought, what is this going to do? Nothing. So she recognized that as just a thought and said, I choose not to believe it. And then she did the video anyways, and she felt better afterwards. So that is a really cool, just quick way that you can turn those thoughts around. You don't have to believe that thought. And then she ended up feeling really good afterwards. Now, this is the fun one here. So she says, later at work, my thoughts that I needed a snack were so insistent that I scarfed down a few ginger snaps. But about 30 to 45 minutes later, I started to probe. Why? Remember I told you last week, one of the best things that we can do when we're running through the model is just ask questions about each one of those places in the model. So after she has these ginger snaps, she starts asking herself why. I want a snack. Why? Because I'm hungry. I ate breakfast less than an hour ago. So why? Because I'm anxious. Why? First day back from vacation, because I feel like I'm behind everyone else. Then she says, do you still want to eat or are you just anxious? And she says, anxious. And her brain says, it's okay, you'll catch up. So she says, so while it did cost me 140 calories, I recognized why the toddler lizard brain was yelling at me. I now just need to start recognizing why it's yelling at me before I give into it. This is everything, and it's so exciting. Laura, thank you for sharing this perspective, because this tiny little example was the whole thing, right? When you guys were asking me last week, well, how does she change her thoughts? Well, she doesn't need to change her thoughts in order to get a different result, right? All we have to do is start questioning our thoughts and seeing that our thoughts are choices. When we see that our thoughts are choices, then we can go on to not believe what we're thinking, or we can end up starting to choose better thoughts that support us even more. And Laura realizing that ginger snaps were actually coming from anxiety instead of hunger, which was the first answer that her brain gave her, she started to realize that kind of story she was telling herself about snacking or things like this that she needed to eat, when really it was just some anxiety. And then she ends up telling herself, it's okay, you'll catch up. How beautiful is that our brain can give us that? Like, even our brain itself can give us a little warm hug and tell us that everything's going to be okay. And we don't need ginger snaps to get there, okay? So Teresa says, group coaching was great. Maybe you can offer this type of coaching to lower the cost for those of us who need it. So I wasn't going to say anything, but since you brought it up and someone else brought it up in the survey as well, the whole plan is that next year I want to do a monthly group coaching program, okay? So keep an eye out for that. This is something that's going to be happening. If you're watching this replay at another time and the group coaching already exists, jump in. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be super, super helpful. And you can see from the people on this workshop and from my surveys, there was every single person loved the group coaching. So yes, it's going to be amazing. And we are going to be starting with this type of content, and we're going to just be digging in deeper and deeper and deeper as we go, and building and building and building until we make this part of just our everyday thoughts, right? Oh, good. Everyone is so excited. Margaret says, yay. Francine says, sounds great. Teresa's excited. Okay, who else on here? We've got a bunch of people on here right now. We've got at least 20 people on here now. Who else is into the idea of group coaching? Just let me know if it was something that you wanted to do. Let me know if that's something what Christina says, me. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. So that's going to be really exciting. So look out for some more information about that coming up really soon. Okay. Nancy says, woohoo. Naomi says, definitely yes. Okay, good. I'm so happy to hear that, you guys. Good. Okay. So that's where I wanted to start out, just kind of like looking at models. So at the end of this lesson, if you guys have some models, be ready, right? If you want to get coached on some models that you had, be ready, and we can go through some more models with the marker and everything too. Grace says, absolutely. Good. I'm so glad to hear it, you guys. Yay. All right. So let's jump into today's lesson. Now, let me give you a little overview of what's going to happen. So we are in lesson number 3. That means we have 4 classes, this one included, left. The next 2 to 3 classes is going to be dedicated to specific practical tools that you can use in your weight loss journey and that you can come back to whenever you kind of get off track or you need to get back on track or whatever, okay? So this is going to be like the nitty-gritty. I need to stop saying meat and potatoes, but what else do you say instead of meat and potatoes? Like, this is going to be the sort of palpable stuff that you can do. The broccoli, there we go, Teresa. This is going to be the kind of palpable stuff that you can do on a daily basis to ensure that you're actually losing weight and that you're staying consistent. And then we're going to be interweaving the model into all of it, because our thoughts are everything to keeping us on track, okay? The avocado pit. Perfect, Francine. I love it. You guys you're whip smart today. Okay, so let's get into those practical tools. Like I said, this week we're going to just start talking about these first 3 tools. If I don't get through all of them, I'll finish them next week, no problem. And we're just going to keep digging into more tools. You can ask questions about them as we go. We can talk about them in the Facebook group as well, about how you're applying them or what you're resisting, or what have you. Grace says the carrots and kale. Okay, yeah. I think we got like a nice little salad going now. Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about protocol, decisions ahead of time, and the scale. But let's just get into sort of the basics, some of the basics that I want to start with here. So we're going to be talking about solving overeating, which is something that we've been talking about the whole time. We want to be able to lose weight. We want to do it for good. So how do we actually do that? So we know that overeating is too much hunger and too much desire, right? So if we can get rid of some of that hunger and some of that desire, we create weight loss. That's like the kind of equation we are creating here. So what we want to do is have this 5-part solution, which I have told you about before. And you guys, I'm going to be going right along with your worksheets today. So if you want to start here on page 1, I just wanted to remind you of a few things. So why are we overweight? Because of too much hunger, too much desire. These things have a lot to do with brain chemicals, conditioning, like Pavlov's dog, just things we're really used to doing all the time. And then, biological things like the types of foods that we come in contact with and how they're addictive and this sort of a thing. So a lot of it is not our fault, right? And all we have to do is figure out how to be able to use that prefrontal cortex to solve the problem. And I'm going to show you more about that today. By the way, remember, there is nothing pleasurable, easy, or effortless about this process, okay? Nothing easy, effortless, or pleasurable. That's not a fun thing to hear, but it's like, like we talked about before, if you wanted to take up yoga or something, there may be some things that are great about it, but there might also be some things about it that you don't love. About everything that we take up, right? Everything that we want to do, there's going to be some good and some bad in it. And so we have to learn how to be okay with those feelings of discomfort. We'll go into more about that soon, but it will feel terrible at first, and that's totally all right. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to feel like it's not working, all that. We just keep going, okay? So the 5-part solution in a nutshell, got that here on this page. I didn't really set this board up right today, so it's a little awkward, but okay. So the 5-part solution, number 1, plan ahead. Number 1, for a reason, plan ahead. This is the step to always come back to when we're off track. This is the step that I always find myself skipping when I'm off track, right? We go on vacation, and we don't feel like planning ahead. We don't feel like deciding what we're going to have ahead of time, whatever. This is the thing that we always end up doing when we get home, right? We get home and we're like, okay, I want to get back on track. What am I going to eat tomorrow, right? We plan ahead. So number 1, and we're going to talk all about how to do this today. Number 2, stick to the plan, right? So if we could just stick to it, that would be so much easier. Sticking to the plan has a lot to do with the model, like we learned about last week, okay? So sticking to it really is a lot of that mental thing. If we're standing in front of the fridge, and we're going, hey, fridge, what do you have for me to eat in here? The mind goes, ooh, I want to eat that. Then I have some other things in the cupboard. I want to eat that too. Then I'm going to eat this. Can anyone relate with me? Right? Like when I'm really craving and I'm really stuck in that pattern, I am so creative about finding stuff that wasn't a meal, but like will satisfy that craving, even if I have nothing in the house, right? I will find something. Does anyone, Francine says, oh my God, that is me. Yeah, totally. Like get so creative, right? Margaret says yes, and then I justify it for sure, 100%, right? So the point here is that that's all mental. We're always going to be able to find some kind of a junk food or even overeating even if we're eating healthy stuff, we can still find ways to overeat unhealthy stuff, right? And I don't know what your name is, but it says Lakibella, so I'm not sure what your first name is, but then you say, and then I have no room for my nutrient-dense meal. Totally. Margaret, yeah, Grace is agreeing with Margaret here, for sure. we will get creative, right? We will find something to eat if there's nothing in the house. We will find a way to overeat no matter what. And so really sticking to the plan comes down to this mindset thing of realizing that those thoughts that we're having are creating our feelings, actions, and results, which are then creating whether we're on plan or off plan, and that we have the ability to change those thoughts whenever we want. Teresa says, even when I bring my salad to work, sometimes I would rather go through a drive-through. Absolutely. And I gotta tell you, I would always rather go through a drive-through. Always, right? You drive through, you tell them what you want, you don't even have to make it, they give it to you, right? It is no wonder that we're overweight when we have such simple solutions for eating nowadays, yeah? And so it is our job now, if we really want well-being, if we really want long-term health, it is our job now to figure out how to counteract that primitive brain that's getting us to just do things quickly and use the prefrontal cortex to be a little bit uncomfortable, learn how to be uncomfortable and be totally okay with it, and then get that long-term amazing well-being, happiness feeling that we don't get from eating quick fast food, okay? Then the other thing that we need to do, at least in the beginning, is to limit exposure to junk or like the negative things, right? In the beginning, we just want to be careful with this one, because if we expose ourselves too much in the beginning to, to parties or to social gatherings or whatever, it can be a little bit difficult. So it can be a little bit easier just to remove a bunch of stuff from your house if you can, right? But also I want you to know that it's not necessary. If we just use the mindset techniques, and we really start to incorporate our thought work and something that I call allowing urges, which we will talk about next week, and we'll get really, really in detail on that one. When we use these techniques, these 100% mindset techniques, we can handle anything. It's just gonna take some practice, okay? So step number 3, manage emotions, allow craving. That's exactly what I was just talking about. This is the probably, like maybe even the most important one to learn how to do in coordination with these two, because I'm sure we all have some experience with already doing these things, right? Planning ahead, sticking to the plan, limiting exposure to junk. These are kind of like typical diet advice nowadays, right? You just need to prep better. You just need to plan better. You need to this, you need to that, right? But this is actually the thing that's going to make all of this happen more smoothly, okay? Once we get this sort of 3-part thing down, we also get the benefits of loving ourselves, trusting ourselves more, and then beating ourselves up less, right? We start to gain that trust. We start to just get better at this whole thing, which in turn makes it even easier. And then we repeat, okay? So we just keep going. The reason, so the ways that we kind of do, so I have this like little 3-part thing right here. So we eat right, we plan our meals, and we coach on the rest. And coach on the rest, what that means is this section here. We coach ourselves on the rest of the stuff that happens in the mind, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next page here, which is about cravings versus emotions. Now, I'm doing this little lesson here because I find that it's very important to just understand this terminology, because we're going to be using this terminology as we go, and just to know that there's differences between these things as well, I think is very helpful. So let's talk about the difference between cravings and emotions, okay? So if you guys have read the book Eat to Live, you might know a little bit about this, but I'll give you, I'm just going to give you this information so you have it in your little arsenal anyways. So let's understand the difference between these 3 things, okay? So physical hunger, or 4 things. Physical hunger, number 1, is a sensation you feel in your body in gradual waves, okay? So that is physical hunger. That is hunger that is actually real, yeah? So when we read the book Eat to Live, we hear about the difference between toxic hunger and true hunger. So physical hunger is going to be this true hunger here. Let me just put a little note there. This is true hunger. And this is actual hunger that occurs as a result of like not having enough calories, right? So it's a kind of sensation that you feel in your body in gradual waves. And I want to explain this gradual waves part. So if it's true hunger, we know that from the book Eat to Live and what Dr. Furman says as being, it's more like in this area of the body. So you get a watering mouth, you get a sense of, and like right here, you get a sense of, it's weird if you haven't experienced yet, but it's kind of like this sense of yearning. It's kind of like, has anyone on here ever felt this true hunger? It's kind of amazing the difference between true hunger and toxic hunger. We'll talk about that in a second, but you get this kind of like it's like your whole esophagus and mouth and tongue, they're just getting ready to eat, right? Like they're producing more saliva, enzymes are starting to do their thing, and you're getting really, oh, Sandra, okay, got it. You're getting really like just kind of ready for that meal. That's when all this stuff happens up here. It's rarely in the stomach. That's what's so interesting. Nancy says, yes, I have felt true hunger. It's really incredible how different that is from withdrawal, and we'll go through this in just a second. But the thing I want to mention here is this gradual waves part. Actual physical hunger is felt in gradual waves, and we know this, that if we are to ignore our hunger for a period of time, it will just go away, right? Like let's say we get really, really busy at work. Teresa says, I cannot recall ever feeling true hunger. I eat too much throughout the day to get there. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that and the withdrawal section. That's a really good point. So this gradual waves thing, like you get busy at work, you're really stressed out and you've got to deal with this project or whatever, like you forget about eating, right? Completely forget about it. And you come back to it later and you're like, oh, right, I got to eat. Yeah, it's kind of nice when we get busy like that sometimes, right? Because then our mind is automatically taken off of the subject of food. But if we suddenly get to a down point in our day, then our body's like, hey, by the way, gotta eat, right? Time to eat. And we get that reminder again. We may be, if we're in this withdrawal stage, we may be having a really kind of like uncomfortable sensation. But it comes and goes in real life in waves where, and, oh, this is the one note I want to make that I did not write in here. It is not uncomfortable. Should I just say it's comfortable? No, it's not uncomfortable. I'm going to say it's not uncomfortable. This is a huge point that I want to make here, because actual physical hunger is something that we can totally deal with. Like you might be hungry and stuff, but like you could just with the power of your own mind be like, okay, I have to wait a couple hours. Like it's just not time to eat. It's totally fine. And it will go away. That is what true hunger is like, and it's only felt up here, okay? Grace says, love getting busy, wish I could stay there more often. Yeah, so Grace, we're gonna be learning how to do this without having to be busy, okay? That's the fun part. So let's talk about cravings a little bit. Cravings are a desire for a specific food or type of food. You know it's a craving if you think about the food, if you think about satiating your hunger, and you can only think of one specific thing to satiate your hunger, okay? If a pile of vegetables won't do it, you're craving, okay? For real. Like that is how you know you're craving. If you think of having a big pile of, steamed vegetables or raw vegetables or whatever, and it's not gonna take it away, you are not hungry. That is toxic hunger, or that is cravings, okay? Something to keep in mind, very, very important. Something to look at every time you're hungry. Start to just notice, if I had a bunch of vegetables right now, would it fix it? Withdrawal is the opposite of physical hunger. So withdrawal is toxic hunger. Sensations experienced mentally and physically from lack of addictive foods. So addictive foods can be a lot of different things. It could be fat, sugar, salt, foods that are high on the caloric density scale, so foods that get absorbed quickly into the body as well. So anything that's higher on the scale is going to be more addictive than something lower on the scale, right? Like vegetables are going to be much less, like they're not addictive at all. They're going to be not addictive, but then you've got nuts and seeds up here a little bit. Then you've got, sweet things, and you've got fried foods up at the top kind of a thing, because you're getting fat, salt, sugar, maybe all at the same time, right? So there's kind of this scale of addiction here. And when we're eating mainly in the non-addictive range, that's when withdrawal goes away. Now, toxic hunger is an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Extremely. And you guys probably all know. Can anyone tell me what the symptoms of toxic hunger are? Like I can think of one of them is irritability. Let me know if you can think of any other ones too, these symptoms of toxic hunger. And I'm just making a note. Headaches, Carol, yeah, for sure. And Sandra says headaches, yep. That was funny, you guys both said it at the same time, so you know, right? Hangry, perfect, Nancy. This combination between hunger and angry, mood swings, yeah. Growling stomach, perfect, Joan. All of these things are symptoms of toxic hunger. Now, kill for the last cookie. Oh my gosh, that's a great point, Grace, because I used to be known for that as well. Like I remember go out to dinner with my husband or something, and he would want to take a bite of my dessert, and I would have like a murderous thought in my head, like, are you kidding me? You may not have any of my dessert, That is definitely withdrawal. irritable Nancy, lack of concentration from Sandra for sure, exactly. So these are all symptoms of toxic hunger, and we know we're in toxic hunger because we have those symptoms. And if we want to get rid of these symptoms and get back to the true sensations of physical hunger, we have to remove ourselves from those addictive foods for quite a long period of time. It can be different for everybody, but you know, several weeks, several months. I think when my brother went cold turkey on nutritarian food, it took him about 6 months to get to the place of true hunger. And I think for me, it was probably 4 or 5 months, something like that, to get to this place where suddenly hunger was just comfortable and it didn't, you know, I could ignore it if I wanted to. That's how you know it's hunger versus withdrawal. When you're having withdrawal and you're having those symptoms, Teresa says, cannot relax or sleep when I have toxic hunger. Yeah, totally interrupts your sleep too. When you have these symptoms, you know that you're experiencing toxic hunger, and cravings tend to go hand in hand with that, right? Like you have cravings for certain things. You feel like you can never get rid of this toxic hunger unless you eat that one thing, and your brain is pummeling you to eat that one thing until you eat it, right? And if you don't eat it, then it's still going to pummel you to eat that one thing. This is a pretty vicious cycle right here. And then let's talk just a little bit about emotions. So emotions, when we're talking about feelings here, we talked about feelings a little bit last week. It's that middle line on the model. These are vibrations felt in the body, which are caused by our thoughts, which we learned last week, right? That our feelings or emotions are caused by our thoughts. So whenever we're having certain thoughts, that creates feelings. And what feelings are in our body are these, like, I don't know, vibrations is an interesting word to use. I don't know if it's the right one, but it kind of is just like a sensation, a vibration that happens in your body that you can kind of sense. Like, I'll give you an example. When I feel very shameful about something, this is a very strong one for me because I'm kind of, you know, in the public eye a little bit. So if I make a mistake on something, I have really deep feelings of shame sometimes. And so for instance, the first challenge that I released, I did the whole thing myself and it made a lot of mistakes. I knew that was going to happen, but I wasn't really prepared for the amount of shame that washed over me for weeks after that happened, right? And I got really intimate with the feeling of shame then, because shame for me, and we're talking about vibrations felt in the body, shame felt like pushing on my shoulders, very heavy. It felt like sludge in my body, and it felt like I was literally trudging through mud for a few weeks. It just felt awful, right? And you can't deny that emotions cause this type of a vibration, like some kind of an actual feeling in our body, like something we could describe, right? And I challenge you, next time you're having feelings, think about what it actually feels like in your body. All right, we're going to be using this more in the future. That's why I wanted to bring it up today. Okay, so here's just a few definitions to give you kind of some depth to what you're to what we are talking about in the future. Okay, and it's just some depth to what you're thinking about in the future too. Okay, so that's that page. Let's go on to the next page about protocol. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of these specific tools, okay? So today we're going to talk about protocol first and a couple other things, and if we go over, I will continue this on next week, okay? So protocol, you might have heard me talk about this before. I talk about this a lot in relation to my 21-day challenges that I put out. Carol says your body physically responds to emotions. Yeah, crying, heart palpitations, 100%. Yeah, that's what these vibrations are, right? So you can have physical responses like actual crying, face gets hot, right? Maybe you get embarrassed, you get flushed face or whatever, heart palpitations, absolutely. And then other things like shame just tend to feel like you're the only one that can hear it. You're the only one that can feel it, right? And it's maybe something that you couldn't quite describe or someone couldn't quite notice about you, but you're feeling it for sure, okay? So protocol is the first thing that I deal with my private clients. When we start off on a weight loss journey, this is the first thing that we go into, okay? Now, what is a protocol? So protocol is a food plan that you create to solve for all of these things. Hunger, chemical and hormonal imbalance, satiety, nutrients, and weight loss. Okay, so a protocol is a set of meals that you're going to follow that will create all of these things for you at once. Now, most of the time when we hear about like protocol, let's just say another word for it is a diet, right? But not really, like kind of not really. Like when we say diet, we're thinking of like, we think of keto diet or Atkins diet or something like that. And those are pretty much just for weight loss, okay? So that would only be solving for this one down here. But a protocol instead is something that solves for all of these things at once, and it's something that you can kind of commit to for life. I pause because for life is a scary feeling, right? So a scary thought. But that's why it's a protocol, because it's something that you can do for life that you think is realistic for you, that's also going to create these things. Now, I'm going to say, if you are in a state of toxic hunger, like we just talked about, doing a nutritarian protocol is going to feel really freaking uncomfortable for months, as I said, right? It's not going to feel right. You aren't going to feel satiated. You're not going to feel like you've had enough to eat. You're going to feel shaky. You're going to have issues for a while on a nutritarian protocol. But the idea of a protocol is that it's something you can do for life because it is also healthy and because it gets your body to the place where you are actually chemically healthy again. So that after 4 or 6 months of following this type of a protocol, your body is detoxed. You can actually get to that place where hunger is now comfortable again, and you get all this other good stuff. Okay, so just bear with me on this description for a sec, and we will go more into how to use this and why. So I say here, choose a protocol that benefits you physically. I'm gonna just underline this, you. Your protocol is gonna be different than my protocol. Teresa, protocol is an eating code of conduct. Absolutely, that's perfect, right? Now your protocol is gonna be different than mine. Why? So Dr. Furman would say that we all could follow a nutritarian protocol and it would work for all of us. And he's correct. He's correct in the idea that it will make us healthy. He's also very clear in various talks and things like that, that we can't all eat the same ratios of nutritarian foods and lose weight. So that's something to keep in mind, right? Like we can all be nutritarian and get healthier, but we can't all be nutritarian and eat the same exact things and get the weight loss and the satiety and all this kind of stuff. So it has to be personal for us. Like I couldn't tell you what to eat and have it be perfect for every single one of you on this call, or every single person in my audience or whatever. I couldn't just say, here's my protocol, do this and everything's gonna be great. This is gonna be perfect for everybody. Everyone can do this, right? That's not how it works. A protocol is very personal. Let me put this over here just as a note, personal. Right? It's specific to each of us. Like we have to find what works for us. So for instance, on my 21-day challenges, I give you samples of my protocol. That's basically what my 21-day challenges are, samples on a daily, like every few days you get a new protocol to try out. You can see if it creates weight loss. You can see if it creates satiety. You can see if it takes care of your hunger. You can see if it starts, well, this one is a little harder because this is more long-term chemical hormonal imbalance. And you know that it's got the right nutrients in it because I've already solved for that. I made sure there's G-bombs and all that kind of stuff every day. But you can see how it works for you. And if you need a little bit more food and you can still lose weight on that, you can add food. Or if you need to take away some of the nuts and seeds, you can take away those and add this instead, right? So that's why a protocol is so personal, because it has to work for you on all of these things. Now, what do we do with the protocol once we have one? So let's say we create a protocol. I'll just give you an example of one that I use all the time because it's so easy. I've done it like a million times and it works every time. It's a huge smoothie. And by huge, you guys, if you haven't seen my smoothies before, you might be surprised. By huge, I mean about 40 to 70 ounces of a smoothie. We're talking like a full Vitamix full is a smoothie to me. 30 to 40 ounces of that would be one meal, and then the rest of it would maybe be dinner, okay? So it would be a smoothie for breakfast, maybe 30 ounces, save some of it, maybe 10 ounces. You could have that or you can have the rest of it for dinner. Honestly, like you could have the whole 70 ounces in one day. And a huge salad, a huge salad for lunch, like huge salad. This is a ton of food, by the way. So many of my clients try this, or so many of my 21-day challengers try this, and they say they can't believe how much they got to eat, and they can't believe they lost weight. I mean, so many people come back saying this, and so many people agree. That's what a nutritarian protocol looks like. It's heavy on the veggies. It's light on the higher nutrient or higher calorie things like nuts and seeds and grains and stuff like that. It's lighter on those things so that you get less calories overall, but tons of bulk. That's a protocol that works for me. I start off with a 24, 30, maybe a little bit more smoothie in the morning. That lasts me 4 hours, 5 hours. Then I have lunch, huge salad. The salad is so big that I get through until 5 p.m., 6 p.m. sometimes, and then I have some more smoothie and I'm done for the day. So easy, because all I have to do is make the smoothie. That takes 10, 15 minutes, and then I've got 2 meals done, right? Breakfast and dinner. Then I've got this huge salad. And for salads, once you get really good, you can make a salad in 15 minutes, yeah? But that's just practice, right? So just keep going kind of a thing. But that would be a protocol for me. When I eat that, and I eat, and asterisk, I eat the specific amount of nuts and seeds and grains and avocado and dates, you know, higher calorie foods. I kind of know what those amounts are for me. When I eat that amount of food every day, I always lose weight. Like, I never don't. But I know this protocol because I've been doing it for so long and have just rinse and repeat. Like I said, I've just been doing that for so long. Now, what's so great about this is that, like, that would be a protocol, be like a smoothie and a salad and a smoothie. And you can mix that up a million different ways, right? There's so many different types of beans, so many different types of lettuces, different salad dressings, different fruits that you could put in your smoothie or whatever. Now you've got so many different meals that you could make, all from just one protocol. The only trick here, and I was just coaching a client on this today, because she was working on her protocol for a couple weeks, and then she came back to me and she was like, I'm not losing any weight, haven't lost any weight. And I was like, all right, let's get really detailed about how much of each specific item you're eating. So I asked her to break that down for me, and she couldn't break it down. She knew what she was eating, but she didn't know how much of it. She was like, well, I did, you know, a few sunflower seeds and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I was like, okay, but how much? And she's like, I'm not sure exactly. It was something like this. And I was like, that's the issue there. We have to get very specific about what a protocol is. We have to weigh things, use, you know, measuring cups and measuring spoons and things like this for a little bit, so we can see how to tweak that protocol exactly to work for us. Now, for instance, on that protocol, and you will see it if you ever join my 21-day challenges, you'll see I tend to have more nuts and seeds in my day than I would have grains, just because I like to keep grains out of my day a little bit because they were more addictive to me back in the day. So I have more nuts and seeds, and I have less grains, and then I keep my fruits to 3 or 4 per day. I keep my beans to half a cup, maybe a cup max, but usually around half a cup per day. I usually don't have avocado. I will only have 1 or 2 dates per day, and I know within those ratios, if I do the same thing the next day, maybe it's a totally different salad, but I do the same thing on those higher calorie foods amount-wise, I will always lose weight. That's my protocol. Is that kind of making sense, you guys? I want you to tell me in the comment section if this makes sense to you, if you have any questions about it. Let's dig into this particular idea about protocol right now. Grace says yes. Let me know if there's anything that seems a little bit unclear, because this is the biggest part of everything, the protocol. You kind of have to know what you're eating first. Francine says, so what do you put on your salad for dressing? So that's going to vary. It depends on the salad I'm doing. Sometimes it's real easy, and it's just maybe a little bit of Bragg's liquid aminos, which is a very salty kind of soy sauce thing. So you just use a tiny bit, and then maybe it's some vinegar, or maybe it's maybe I'll make a little dressing that's like cashews and almond milk, so it's kind of thinned out, plus a little bit of vinegar or something. Or keep it real simple. Do avocado and lime juice. That's a really good one. Trying to just keep things super, super simple. Sometimes if I have enough ingredients in my salad and my salad is really, really chopped up, sometimes all I need is a vinegar, right? A lot of the times what I love to do is I'll have a huge chopped salad, but I'll put a bunch of like apples, and I'll put a bunch of blueberries in there. This might like apple blueberry, or pears and blueberries or something like that. I don't need any dressing for that at all. Or you can use like a simple cashew dressing, just a little bit of it to kind of give it some flavor. these are the kinds of things you learn as you go, right? And you learn, like trying out different salads and seeing what it's like. Someone asks, how many nuts do I eat per day approximately? Sandra, so me personally, I eat a lot more nuts than Dr. Furman usually says because I eat less grains, okay? I want to make that point clear. I usually eat about 2 to 3 ounces per day, but I barely ever have grains. I usually don't have oatmeal. I usually don't have Ezekiel wraps or anything like that. I do sometimes. I'm actually going to be putting more of those in my videos coming up. But for me personally, I prefer to have more fat rather than grains. And nuts and seeds are necessary every day, but grains are not necessary. Like you can have them, he says, and he says in the forum and a lot of different places that you don't have to have them at all. They're not nutritionally important. Nuts and seeds are things like this, you know, greens and vegetables and things like that are more nutritionally important than grains. So I just cut them out because I don't really need them much. And then on the days where I'm not losing weight, but I don't really care, I'll have a little bit of grains. So Margaret says, yes, any other plan expects you to follow exactly what they say without consideration for what works for the individual. Exactly. So important. And this is why with my clients, we work very specifically on what works for them, and we create something that's specific for them. And as we go each week, we're tweaking and seeing what's working, what's not working. That's everything. And the reason we do that, you guys, you can follow my 21-day challenges if you want. That's great because it will give you sort of a start. But I really want you to learn how to create your own protocol because it means you're going to be able to do it for the rest of your life. You're not just going to like look at what I do and copy that and then, you know, it doesn't work or something like that and then you think it doesn't work. No, this whole idea is about you figuring out what works for you specifically. Joanne says, sounds like a great protocol and I've seen and tried your recipes. Love the nutritional yeast, lemon juice, and avocado. Oh, that's a really, really good one too. That's my cheesy kale salad. You guys can find that on my website. Joan says, can't imagine exactly what mine would look like, but finding that sounds really thrilling. Thank you, Joan, for saying that because it is so thrilling and empowering. I'm just going to put that up here, empowering. And I want you guys to write this down too on your notes. Because once you know what creates weight loss for you, as well as satiates you, starts to balance out all that weird stuff we got going on. Like, and so when I say chemical and hormonal imbalance, I'm talking about things like insulin imbalance because we eat too much grains or too much sugar. I'm talking like dopamine imbalances, serotonin imbalances, ghrelin and leptin, which are the hormones that balance our hunger signals and stuff like that. If we're eating standard American diet all the time, processed foods, these are going to be totally off. And that's okay. But we can get it back, right? Like we want to be able to get this back. And we can only do that with non-processed, whole, wonderful, plant-dense, nutrient-rich foods, right? There is a light at the end of the tunnel. We can get it back, but we have to keep trying this protocol thing and figuring out what works for us. The other thing that's really important is satiety. That's why we talk about having way more vegetables than we talk about having nuts and seeds or grains or these little quantities of things. Way more vegetables because that's going to give us the nutrients and the satiety. We're going to get tons of bulk and tons of fiber. Carol says, or wait, Teresa says, are you meaning that one person may be able to eat oatmeal daily and still lose weight, but someone else might not lose weight? Exactly. Yes, somebody might be able to do oatmeal daily and someone might not. But let me explain this a little bit because probably most people can eat oatmeal and still lose weight, but what happens with me is that when I start eating oatmeal, I overeat oatmeal, okay? That's my issue. It's not that I can't lose weight on oatmeal, it's that grains were always a trigger for me, so I would eat too much, okay? And so that's kind of the idea there. I think it's really important in protocol to find something that works for you physically and is realistic. This realistic one here is important because if I said to you, no more grains, some people are going to be like, oh, heck no, right? Like I'm eating grains. That's it. It's not realistic for me to, I'm like a weatherman over here trying to do this. Like it's not realistic for me to give up grains, right? For me, I like nuts and seeds more, but it might be more realistic for someone else to have some wild rice in their diet because they like that more. It's a lot of things. It's mental, it's emotional, it's all this. And yes, some people don't lose weight if they have too many grains or whatever. So that is something to keep in mind, okay? So Carol says, last week I just weighed everything I did for my breakfast scramble just to have in my mind that I'm not going overboard or anything. Tahini could be easy for me to overdo it on if I don't measure it. Great points, Carol. So weighing and measuring, I also want to make a point that it is not something that we have to do for the rest of our life. We just have to find a protocol. Like we just have to find a set of meals that works really well for us. weigh and measure for a while to see how much it is. Like for instance, a quarter cup of nuts and seeds, which is our allotment, you know, Nutritarian allotment for the day, which is about 1 ounce, is about this much in my palm. I know that because I've actually measured out a quarter cup and then put it in my hands and looked at it so I could eyeball in the future, right? Now, every time I want to lose weight, if I'm putting nuts and seeds into my smoothie, I put my hand over the blender, pour it in here, get it about a quarter cup, and only put that much in. Yeah. So now I don't have to use measuring cups anymore, but I know that if I had 2 or 3 of these, probably not going to lose weight that day. Yeah. Just something to kind of get used to and understand how these work. So Sandra says, I cut the grains when I was 100% vegetarian, but kept my fat too low while breastfeeding and starting having bad physical problems. My protocol was a problem. Sure, exactly. So when you are, like, of course, pregnancy and breastfeeding are going to be different. You've got to have more protein, more fat on those kinds of things. But also, that's where satiety comes in, right? And that's where the nutrients come in. You want to make sure that you're solving for all of these things at once. I think that this is Christina. It's hard for me to see. Yeah, Christina. Sometimes the trial and error phase to find your protocol can be time consuming, and sometimes we give up before we find it because we get discouraged. Exactly. That's the reason why people decide that the Nutritarian diet doesn't work, is because they don't even get to the place where they figured out how to lose weight. Yeah. That's why you have to be like, what's the word? Like, head to the grindstone. I don't know what that phrase is, but like, you've got to really, really trudge through, get there, keep coming back to figuring that out. And that's why I love the 21-day challenges, by the way, because you can just try my protocol. And I do different protocols every 3 days in the challenges. So you can try different things out, see if it works for you. And if it does, then at least you know a place to start. That's why I like to kind of do that, because you guys have at least a starting place. And then if it wasn't satisfying you, then you can have a little bit more grains or whatever. And then you can start to tweak those kinds of things. Okay. Okay, so Margaret agrees with Christina for sure. Sandra says, how fun to know this is a personalized process. Yes, and it always should be, right? Nose to the grindstone. That's it, Teresa. Thank you. Persevere. That's a good one. You guys are the best. Thank you. All right, so that's what a protocol looks like. One thing that I say in my coaching, which is hard for people to swallow, is the idea of committing for a protocol for 2 weeks and evaluate it. And we're going to talk about how to evaluate in a second. But committing for 2 weeks is the part that everyone goes, oh, what do you mean? What I mean by that is pick a protocol and do it for 2 weeks. And everyone goes, oh my God, 2 weeks, I could never eat the same thing for 2 weeks in a row, right? I want you to look at this like we looked at that graph of consistency last week. A blip. 2 weeks is a blip on your timeline. Think of it like, all right, you try a because, and we say 2 weeks because some people, it actually takes a full 2 weeks to even notice if something's working or not, like to even have any weight loss, because there's a lot of things going on in our bodies. For me, it's a little bit easier. I'm very lucky in that way, where I can lose weight the next day after a changed protocol, right? A lot of the times, if we're doing it for a while and we start to change things up too much, we can't tell if that protocol worked or not, because we're changing too many things at one time. If we're doing it for a couple of days and then we get so bored of it that we end up having a little bit more the next day, then we wouldn't know if it actually worked or not, right? So that's why the idea here is to commit for 2 weeks. But what I want to talk about is the little mental part that occurs in there. Because when we say to ourselves, oh, I could never do that for 2 weeks, that's a thought. If we say to ourselves like, oh my gosh, I need more variety in my food, that's a thought, right? All of these things are thoughts that come up that tell us we can't do it. And then that's where we start to feel like we can't do it, right? Sandra says, heck yeah, I can try 2 weeks. I feel defeated when I think of committing for the rest of my life. For sure, right? All we want to do is find something that creates a little bit of weight loss. And as we're going, we can start to tweak things as we go. And start to learn more about ourselves in the process. We can do it for just 2 weeks, see if it creates weight loss. Then we know what to come back to whenever we want to lose weight, right? And we can switch up things. Like in this smoothie, if we had berries, we could then make it into a banana smoothie instead. Or if we had this salad and we had this dressing, well, let's try this other dressing and have a totally different salad. Or let's make a sweet salad with apples and bananas instead of, or apples and blueberries or whatever, instead of, you know, like Nancy came up with this amazing sushi inspired salad that was like inside out vegetable sushi salad. Oh my God, it was like so good. And I would have never thought of that. But when I looked at the quantities of stuff and I was like, okay, it has this much nuts and seeds and it has this much whatever. It was the same thing as eating my apple blueberry salad, sort of calorie density wise. but two completely different experiences. And that's where it really gets fun, right? Because then once you start to be like, okay, smoothie, salad, smoothie, or say your protocol is oatmeal, salad, soup, and you can change this protocol as you go. You don't always have to be smoothie, salad, smoothie, or whatever that protocol is. You can start to find new protocols as you go and be able to switch out those ingredients. I mean, honestly, the possibilities are totally endless. So Teresa says, could you eat, say, oatmeal and berries for 3 days, same smoothie next 3 days, and back to the oatmeal? Absolutely, yeah. So find a protocol that works, find another protocol that works, and you can just keep finding protocols that work, right? Like, as I said, maybe one of them is smoothie, salad, smoothie. Maybe another one is oatmeal, salad, soup. Maybe another one is, a savory breakfast and then a soup and then maybe a smaller salad for dinner, whatever. You can switch these up as you go and keep learning more. But all that matters is as you're looking at a protocol, you are seeing if it does all this. If it does all this, you got a protocol, write it down, stick to it, use the next one, right? Like find another one, and then you can mix and match as you go. Leah says, I don't think I stuck to a protocol long enough to find out what works. So variety needs to wait until I figure out my protocol. There you go, girl. I love that. Look at that thought shift, right? You can just shift those thoughts. And when you start having those thoughts in the middle of the day, like, I don't want that salad, right? Or I just don't want that thing, right? Like Teresa says, she just wants to go to the drive-thru instead. You start to have those thoughts of, I don't have to believe that. That's just my brain being lazy, or that's just me being lazy. It's going to be better for me if I have a salad. You start to choose these other thoughts, and you start to realize that I don't want to is just, that's just BS, right? Okay, cool. So I've got Joan who raised a hand. Joan, let me know. Is that because you want me to bring you on camera and talk about something? Because I want to get through some of this other content first, because we're running out of a little time here. And then I can certainly bring you on the Q&A section in a minute, okay? All right, let's move on. That's protocol. So that's what I want you guys to start thinking about. Start trying to find your protocols, okay? That is your number one thing. The next thing we're going to talk about is decisions ahead of time. And this one is, actually, I think this is we're probably just going to get through this one. And then next week, we're going to talk about the scale as a tool, okay? And this one is really, really important and really great. So I can't wait to give this to you, but we're going to do this next week, okay? Joan has put her hand down. Did you chicken out, Joan? That's okay. Okay, so we're going to go to decisions ahead of time. Now, I think that's the last, I have this other one too, so we'll come to that next week. So decisions ahead of time. We talked about this before as one of our 5 things that we're going to do, okay? And the top thing was to plan ahead. And we've talked about this before. This is something that you see all the time in diet mentality. Like, you hear this a lot because it's actually really important to plan ahead, but we're going to talk about why today. So decisions ahead of time. This is just like another word for planning ahead. Okay. Decisions ahead of time, but why? So what does a decision ahead of time look like? For instance, we've got a protocol that we kind of, oh, Joan says it was a mistake. Okay, I'll let you off the hook. And by the way, you guys, get ready, because in just a few minutes, we're going to start up the Q&A section. So if you want to come on camera with me, I would love that. Please do that. So raise your hand to come on camera in a few minutes, anytime right now, and then I'll call on you when we start the Q&A. And otherwise, prepare your questions. If I don't get enough questions, I'll come back to some content, but I would really love to do some questions today, okay? So let's talk about what decisions ahead of time is. So decisions ahead of time are something that we decide like about 24 hours in advance, maybe 12 hours minimum, okay? What this would mean is if we write it down and we use detail, that's like deciding what we're going to eat the night before. Yeah, like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to have this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner. We can do that the night before or that evening, and we write it down. Now we put in some real detail there. I gotta say that every time I end up losing weight, it's because I'm very specific about those higher calorie, what's the word? Foods. I don't know. That's higher calorie, lower nutrient foods like nuts and seeds or avocado or like, by the way, every time I say these, group these in your mind. These are the higher calorie, lower nutrient foods. Nuts and seeds, dried fruit, regular fruit, grains, avocado. These section of foods here are the ones that you want to think about as being the foods that you need to measure in the beginning. You need to be very specific about what you're doing. So let me just give you guys a little bit of notes on this real quick. And I should probably just I'm going to send you guys a list of, it actually comes from page 216 of Dr. Fuhrman's book, but it's tweaked from the perspective of someone who has been doing this weight loss coaching for a long time and what has worked for a lot of clients and what works for me. So I'm going to send you out a list of like just the higher calorie foods. So that way you guys have a list of it, but I want you guys to take notes right now. What this is the foods that are not limited in any way, they're completely unlimited, are greens, green vegetables, and any non-starchy vegetables. That's like onions, mushrooms, eggplant, tomatoes, peppers, broccoli, cauliflower, and then, you know, collard greens, kale, romaine. These kinds of foods are all unlimited. And when I say unlimited, I don't mean like you can have a little bit and not worry about it. I mean like you should have a massive amount. Like you need to be eating a lot of these, okay? Those are completely unlimited. Almost everything else on the Eat to Live diet is kind of limited. You want to think about it, especially if you're thinking about weight loss, okay? So here's what I put into that category. Beans, I keep them at about a half a cup in weight loss mode. I know Dr. Fuhrman says they're unlimited, and I know he says you can have a cup or more, but actually he says a half a cup to a cup or more. And so I go on the low end because beans are a higher calorie food. If you, like, this is a protocol thing that you have to figure out. If you find that you can have a lot of beans, that's totally cool. Have some more beans, right? But at least just stick with a half a cup to start with. That, and I put those on my salad, my lunch salad. It's not a lot of beans. That's just a little bit of beans on my salad, and that really helps with satiety. If you find you're having tons of trouble with satiety, it could be because you don't have enough fat or because you're not eating enough beans. So feel free to increase those beans and then see how other things work with it, okay? So beans, start with a half a cup and then up it if you can. The next thing is nuts and seeds. So beans are something you have to have every day, as are nuts and seeds. Those I like to start with, where clients, I like to start them on 1 ounce. For me, I personally have 2 or 3 ounces, but I don't have a lot of avocado, I don't have a lot of dried fruits, and I don't have a lot of grains in response to the amount of nuts and seeds that I'm having, okay? The other thing that I want you to sort of think about limiting is fruits. Now, of course, Dr. Fuhrman says fruits are unlimited, but they are not. They really should not, because if you're eating 12 apples in a day, or 15 bananas in a day, you're going to be having a lot less greens and vegetables and things like that, and you're going to be getting way too many calories. So they're not unlimited, and we kind of just want to think about this. And so for me, in order for me to have a lot of greens and a lot of veggies, that means I have to cut back a little bit on the fruit. So I stick to 3 or 4 fruits per day, and that's pretty easy to do. That means you can have 1 for dessert for salad. After salad, you can have 1 for dessert after dinner, and you can have 2 or 3 maybe, 1 or 2 for breakfast. And just make one of those a cup of berries so you can get your berry G-bomb in. And now you've got enough fruit and you're still satisfied because you get some sweet stuff, right? So fruits, keep them to 3 or 4 per day when you're starting. Beans, half a cup. Nuts and seeds to about 1 ounce-ish, which as I said is about a 1/4 cup, unless you're doing nut butter, which then is going to be a little bit less because that's more dense, right? We're just thinking about these things logically, yeah? Just think about these things logically and very scientifically, and then we'll be good. The other category then is avocado. Avocado, you can have 1/3 of an avocado per day. Dried fruits, you can have 1 to 2 tablespoons per day. That's about 1 or 2 medjool dates, or raisins or whatever. And then grains. So then grains are the last category, but they are unnecessary. So you don't need any grains at all nutritionally. They're good for you, they're healthy foods, but they're not as good as all those other foods I just said. So grains, totally unnecessary. By the way, dried fruit and avocado, also totally unnecessary. If you have the nuts and seeds, you're good. Yeah, so grains, dried fruit, avocado, not necessary. And if you're gonna do grains, start with a half a cup per day, maybe a cup per day, but really no more than that, because that's a really quick way to hinder your weight loss, okay? So those are kind of the categories there. And in order to create your protocol, you want to be like working on that and trying things and moving things around and seeing what works for you. And remember, this is on a daily basis. So it's not per meal, it's per day. So if you have some beans in your salad and then you have a lentil soup, you're probably going to go over on your beans that day. So that's something to keep in mind, right? Or if you have, say you have a cup of beans and then you want to have some chili, that's going to be, it's just going to be too many calories. You know, there's nothing wrong with beans, but if you're looking for weight loss, that's something to keep in mind, okay? Any questions on that, let me know. So we want to plan 24 hours in advance. We want to write it down. So the idea is that what I do the night before, and I'll give you guys some examples of this. Here is an example of a protocol that I wrote a few weeks ago. This is one that I had from Thursday, which is maybe a little bit hard to see, but now I think you can see it. I had a smoothie for breakfast. I wrote down 30 ounces and I was going to have, that's not like 2 walnuts. It was, no, 2 handfuls of walnuts is what I meant. So I was going to have 2 ounces plus my flaxseed. Then I was going to have a broccoli kale salad, which was actually a mix from Trader Joe's, but I was going to take out the dressing and stuff and add lettuce, some extra lettuce. I always add, if I'm getting a mix at the store, I always add more lettuce to it. Plus I was going to add some cooked mushrooms, onions, and then some lentils. And then I was going to have for dinner 3 cups of a sauteed veggie mix that I had made and 2 tablespoons of a nut butter sauce that I made. So this was going to be my protocol for the day. I got really, really busy this day, so I didn't even get to eat this last meal, which was totally okay and cool, and I lost weight that day. You could just essentially, like if you lost, I could, but to be clear, I could have eaten all that food and I still would have lost weight, right? Like I just would have lost a little bit less than if I, than not having had the dinner, okay? So then the next day I was like, oh, I had these interesting flax wraps that I made, these wraps made out of flax, and I wanted to try them out. I didn't love them. I'm still tweaking that recipe, but these were all the things I was going to put on it. I was very specific about how many tablespoons of hummus I was going to use, how much tofu I was going to use, and then these kinds of things didn't matter, vinegar or whatever. I could have those unlimited. Then I was going to have some soup and then maybe some leftover smoothie too. Now the thing is, when I'm making a protocol, I already know what protocol I need. Like when I look at it and I write down a few things I want to eat, I can just take a second look at it and be like, oh, that's too many nuts. I'm going to remove some of those nuts or this or that, or, you know, take some of that tofu out and add beans or whatever. So I can really look at it. And that's what you're looking to do, is getting really, really good at writing something down, maybe based on stuff you have in your fridge or in your freezer or whatever, and then looking at that list and going, oh, that's too much of this. I'm just going to remove this or whatever. When you're in weight loss mode, you're like, okay, that's how I'm going to do this. That's what I'm going to eat tomorrow. So that's just an example of 3 days. I do this all the time, you guys. I'm always writing down. These are just a few that I found in my my cupboard from months past. I had put myself on a challenge a long time ago. You can't see this, but put myself on a oh, you can't even read it. Sorry. It says I was going to have no banana ice cream, no dates, 1 salad per day. I was like making myself do this thing, right? So I do things ahead of time. I make decisions ahead of time all the time. When I'm on track, it's because I'm making decisions ahead of time, okay? And as we talked before with the protocol, we commit to those decisions and then we adapt when they're not working. And then here's the, this is the kind of big thing I want you guys to highlight here. Prefrontal cortex. The entire reason that we make decisions ahead of time is so that we can use our prefrontal cortex to decide. Now we've talked about the prefrontal cortex being that part of our brain that makes rational, long-term oriented decisions, right? It's that part of our brain that's smart, that knows what we need in our long-term health, that knows how to get us to age 90, 95, 100, that knows what's going to actually make us feel good in the long term instead of just what's good for right now. That's our primitive side of the brain, right? We want to use that prefrontal cortex to start making decisions. When we decide something ahead of time, that's using the prefrontal cortex. When we're in our car hungry after work and we go through the drive-through, that's the primitive side of the brain working, okay? If we're hungry in our car after work and we drive past the drive-thru and we go, no, I have a salad at home, it's okay, I'm just gonna eat the salad, it's only 10 minutes from now, I'm not gonna die, that's the prefrontal cortex, right? But the night before, if we had said, I usually have a craving to go to the drive-thru, I'm not gonna do that, I'm gonna have a salad prepared for when I get home, That would be also using the prefrontal cortex, and it would also get us to our long-term goal, yeah? So that's what we're really, really looking to do, is just use that prefrontal cortex at all times. And when we commit in advance, the night before or whatever, we write it down and we give enough detail so we know specifically how much we're eating. And then we commit and we're using this prefrontal cortex. Once we've done this, we've now created a plan to get to those long-term goals, okay? This is the first thing to go out the window when we're on vacation. Yeah, this is the first thing to go out the window when we're in social situations, isn't it? It is the first thing that we give up on when we're like, oh, screw it, right? I just want to go to this party, or I just want to enjoy this or whatever, I don't want to think. But remember, not using our prefrontal cortex comes with long-term net negative, right? That comes with more negative than it's worth, because then we have all the guilt, we have the shame, we have the beating ourselves up, we have the actual weight gain, we have the, salt that it takes to get rid of. We have all these other things that we have to get rid of once we've made that, oh, I don't want to think ahead, right? I don't want to make that decision. And when we say that, I don't want to think ahead, that's just too much work. We are forgetting about all the after work that occurs from being guilty and shameful and all the things that happen after we go off of our plan, right? Just remember that there's discomfort on either side of it, and which discomfort do you choose, okay? The last point about this is planned exceptions. So we do not have to be perfect, and we do not have to always have the same exact meals every single day. I want to make a note that your protocol should be something you can handle on a daily basis anyway. So for instance, if you're saying like, oh, I never eat grains, that's not realistic. Yeah, like for me to say on my protocol that I never eat grains, not realistic. I have days on my protocol that include grains and days that don't include grains. I happen to know that on the days where I include grains, probably not going to lose weight that day, but that's okay. It's okay for me to have some protocol days where I'm not losing weight, right? Because we want to have some maintenance days too. But this idea of planned exceptions is like a little bit extra there too, that like we can have. And so I like to do it like one or two meals per week that we call joy eats. So let me just write this down because I didn't put this here. 1 to 2 meals. This is a good thing to sort of stick with. Joy eats here. Exceptions to that protocol. So we actually have some like time off, if you will, of sticking to this specific plan or whatever. That we say, like for me, this typically comes in the form of going to this awesome vegan restaurant nearby that we just love. And they use salt and they use oil. And sometimes we get like the buffalo cauliflower wings that are, deep fried and stuff like that. But it's planned. We do it on purpose. And we know every weekend we're probably going to go to this restaurant. We're probably going to get this stuff, but we only do it once or twice a week. So it doesn't affect anything. It then becomes part of that 5 or 10% in the nutritarian diet that we're totally allowed, right? And planned exceptions, the part that's important here is this word planned, because that ensures that we're going to be using our prefrontal cortex, okay? We want to always be using our prefrontal cortex. Let me make a note that we're not going to be perfect at this, okay? But just huge disclaimer, we're not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect at it. I totally mess up. I go days and weeks without following the protocol sometimes when I'm just off because I'm stressed about this or that or this or that. We're going to talk a lot more about that next week and how we can avoid that kind of stuff. But when we plan as much of this stuff as we can and we just keep practicing at this and we keep getting better at it, we're only going to get better at it, and we're going to find more and more weight loss. And we're going to be able to do it for longer periods of time, yeah? But I know that there's some resistance probably in your mind right now just to this whole concept, and that is also okay. I want to make a note that resisting this type of an idea, this type of planning is also okay, because that's your primitive side of your brain going, whoa, 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 I don't want to do all this stuff. This is too much work. It means we're going to lose weight. That's bad. Let's stay right where we are, where we're comfy. I don't want to do things that are scary. Yeah, Sandra says, my primitive side is bawling. Oh, poor little baby, right? Exactly. Like I have a lot of experience with this, my toddler, she's almost 2. And like every day her primitive side of her brain is like, protesting about something. But we can start to strengthen this, and this is what this all is. We don't have to be perfect, but we are strengthening this portion of our brain. It's a muscle. It needs to be exercised because we've never exercised it before. So doing this and just doing our best and just keep going, this is going to create long-term positive growth, and we're just going to keep getting better at it and better at it. Teresa says joy eats, meaning maybe with salt, oil, fat, but not pizza, hot dogs, nachos, right? Are you asking for permission right now? Yes. So joy eats, honestly, you guys, it's your life. It's your protocol. You get to do whatever you want. If one of your joy meats a week is joy eats a week, or joy meat, is a hot dog, that can be your choice. Dr. Fuhrman says on the Nutritarian diet, 5 to 10% of your diet can be these kind of not these kinds of off-plan foods, but it can be off-plan foods. He says you can have meat 5 to 10%. He says you can have it a little bit here and there. Now, when we talk about the difference but what he's saying for this 5 to 10%, and I want to be clear here, what he says about 5 to 10% is unprocessed food, but may have some of that salt, oil, sugar, blah, 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 but still the least amount processed as possible is the way he puts it. The way I put it is a little bit more gray area. Dr. Fuhrman's job is to show us what's going to be the healthiest for our longevity, right? My job is more about how can people live and still be happy and stuff, right? So like I say, I don't really agree with hot dogs, right? Because I just feel like they are so on the processed side. They are very carcinogenic. I don't think it's responsible to say that that's okay to eat. But some cheese on pizza, for instance, I don't think that's a big deal, right? Some salt, some oil, that kind of a thing. I think that's okay. If we're talking about sausage on a pizza, different story, super processed, right? So there is a continuum, like there is a spectrum of these foods that are acceptable or not. But also, I have no say over what you eat, right? And this is about your life, and it's about your happiness and what you want. So that's why I said in the marketing of this workshop, you can even follow keto if you want and still understand these concepts, because what matters is the mindset part of it. Your health is your decision. So you get to decide whatever you want those joy eats to be. Maybe, like if you're coming from standard American diet, yeah, maybe your joy eats are hot dogs for a while, because having 1 or 2 hot dogs is better than having 20 hot dogs a week. I'm going to tell you a little story, a very, very embarrassing story. And I have friends on Facebook who will back me up about this. I remember back when I first moved to Florida, it was probably about 12, 15 years ago. I used to have 1 hot dog per day. It was my lunch. I would split it up and have it on 2 buns with American cheese and a Coke at lunch every single day. Every time the girls would be like, hey, do you want to go out for lunch? I'd be like, no, I'm going to have my hot dog. And they used to just make fun of me because it was like, I always just wanted that. Like I was so addicted, like honestly, for real addicted. That's all I wanted. I ate the same thing every single day, right? And that was how I ate. So if you're coming from that, 1 hot dog a week is going to be a lot better than what I used to do, right? But that's what I was coming from. But if we're in a place where we're kind of nutritarian-ish, and we really are kind of, we're getting there, I would say, let's try to not have any more hot dogs, yeah? Just because they're so processed and they are so bad. But it sort of all depends on where you are. But also, asterisk, I'm not going to tell you what to do ever. It's your life. It's your choice, right? So, let's see, Christina says, oddly enough, I feel excited. I'm not sure why I usually have a lot of wallowing. Maybe something is changing. Yay, Christina, I'm so glad to hear that. And just notice that wallowing comes from thoughts, right? So maybe it's that your thoughts are starting to change. Sandra says, does it ever get to a point, Sherry, where it doesn't feel like it's too much work to eat on protocol? Yeah, 100%. It does. It definitely gets to that point where suddenly it's like, oh, no big deal, right? And I'll tell you a little bit about that continuum. So look at someone who came from eating hot dogs every single day. This was actually me, the same person. I can pinch her. I'm the one that used to eat hot dogs every single day. To now, sure, it's 12, 15 years later. But now I'm at a place where, and I'll just tell you, for example, my protocol is either a smoothie or oatmeal, then a salad, and then sometimes I have dinner, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have big enough meals where I'm not even hungry, or then I'll have a little bit more food like I showed on there, maybe some veggies or maybe a soup or maybe a little casserole. It's getting cooler out now, so probably gonna be more casseroles and soups in my future. And so I have this thing now where like, this is my protocol. This is it. Like, this is what I eat. When I'm in weight loss mode, I just follow it and I deal with all the mind drama at the same time so I can get through that, right? So I can keep doing that. And then there are absolutely days where I have some vegan pizza. And there are absolutely days where I eat some chocolate that I should not be eating because it has dairy in it. Or there are absolutely some days where I go off the deep end, right? And then I'm like, oops, better get back on. But I always get back on, always. That's the thing. That's the just keep going thing. And the thing is, like, I have sold myself so much on the idea of what's healthy and knowing that, and you know, salads are the main dish. Got to have some greens, got to have this, got to have that. The more you do this, the more you practice, meaning the more you fall off and get back on, the better you're going to get and the easier it will get. Now, I definitely have days where I'm like, oh, I don't want a salad. And then you know what happens? I choose a different thought and I go, that's just that thought I have again. Don't have to believe that one. Like, I know you don't want one, but you're going to have one anyways because it's good for you. And you've already chosen that you're going to do salads every day because you know that's long-term. And I go through this whole conversation with myself and then I end up having the freaking salad. Maybe 1 out of 7 or 1 out of 10 times I don't have the salad, right? And then I'm like, screw it, I'm just going to have this for lunch or whatever. Or I just have, like today, I'll give you an example today. So I had my smoothie and then I was preparing, I had my smoothie at probably around noon, so I was really busy this morning. And I was preparing for this workshop, going, doing so many things, and it got to be about 4:15 and I was like, oh crap, I gotta like eat. So I quick made another smoothie again and just downed half of it. I got the rest of it in my fridge because I just didn't have any time, right? 2 smoothies in one day. I had a salad waiting for me. It was on the counter. It was, I hadn't put it together yet, but I was gonna eat it. And I just didn't get to it. So okay, I had 2 smoothies in one day. It was like an all smoothie day or whatever. Totally fine. And then tomorrow I might be extra hungry because I didn't eat enough today, technically. So then I might have some grains or I might have some bread or something like that tomorrow. This is going to fluctuate as we go, but the idea of a protocol is all for us to understand what creates weight loss in our body, what creates satiety and gets us all the nutrients and all that kind of stuff for just us, right? And then we can rinse and repeat, we can switch things around and all that. But the idea of a protocol in the beginning is so that we can first get a baseline. And that's something we're going to talk about a lot, especially next week when we talk about the scale. Just getting a baseline for knowing what works for us, and then we can get fancy with stuff, okay? Tracy says, so I love cheeseburgers. So a cheeseburger once a month, or rather a hamburger, no cheese once a month. Yeah, I mean, this is totally up to you, right? Like completely up to you. Me, I've gotten to the place where I'm no longer interested in actual meat burgers. I love veggie burgers though. So even like a Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger, I don't really love those, but like going out to a restaurant and having like a really fatty, oily, salty burger, I'll do that every once in a while. There may be a point, Teresa, where you get to the place where you don't even care about the meat flavor anymore, and you might just kind of get there. This could be in 5 years. It could be in 10 years, right? It could never be. But the point is, this is your journey. So as you go, we're just going, right? Have that joy eat, have that thing, and don't be sad about it. Like, don't be mad at yourself for doing it. Just choose it, own it, have it, be done with it, and then have another one next month, right? But don't make it dramatic. Make the decision, do the thing that's gonna keep you on track and keep you interested in that protocol. If that means a cheeseburger once a week or once a month, okay, that's where you are right now. And so this message is for everyone. Maybe pizza once a week for now is what's gonna keep you on track, right? Maybe a chocolate bar, I don't know what it is, and I don't wanna be like giving you guys all these ideas about food or whatever, but like, maybe for you, it's going to be this food or whatever. And maybe in a year or in 2 years or in 5 years, it's going to be better and better and better where you don't want those foods anymore. But the point is that eating nutritarian foods starts to clear out that system. It starts to help you detox and get you there so that it's much easier to choose those foods on a more regular basis, to the point where cheeseburgers just don't do it for you anymore, right? Or pizza, maybe they always do it for you, but it's easier for you to resist as time goes on. So Francine says, I guess it depends on what your overall goals are. To live a long, healthy life or just get skinny? I prefer both. My only processed vice will be seitan and vegan processed meats. Sure, absolutely, 100%. That's your protocol, Francine, perfect. And definitely that is the thing to keep in mind here. If your goals are about health, for sure, we want to be like erring towards the side of nutritarian if we can, but also if it's about staying on, because here's the other thing too, like if we are wherever we are, like, I don't want to be too permissive, but you have to think about this, like, health-wise, but you have to think about this idea that wherever you are, if going too far in the nutritarian direction makes it so that you fall off completely and never get back on, then that was too strict for you, right? And you got to kind of look at that and see. There's also a lot of mindset involved there, right? A lot of people have issues with getting back on track or falling off the wagon, or, you know, I've been off for so long, I can't get back on. Those are all thoughts. So we want to put all of this together, the protocol and the mindset work at the same time, to realize that whatever we're telling ourselves about our journey is just thoughts, and any of those can be changed at the same time. And so this idea of, choosing between healthy life or just getting skinny, if it's just about skinny, you can use any diet to do that, right? It's not necessarily about nutritarian, but if we are looking for getting, because I know not all of you on here are nutritarian, but if we are looking for that long-term health, we want to get as close as we can to the types of recommendations that I mentioned before, and the types of recommendations in Eat to Live as we can, as soon as we can. But what are you going to stick with? What are you going to find as too restrictive or too healthy or whatever? And are you going to stay on it or not? Just kind of some things to think about, okay? And then Joan says, curious, roughly what % of the time am I on protocol in weight loss mode? So because I'm not at my final goal, it's 5 to 10 pounds from here, I kind of am and always have been in weight loss mode, right? But what I notice about weight loss mode is that it's not 100% like 100% of the time. I can't do it all the time. I can't stick to it all the time. So I kind of am always just trying to get to this goal. And like, if I get there, I get there. If I don't, I don't. Like, okay, I'm going to, you know, I don't decide to take a couple weeks off, but if I find myself having too much grains for a few days, and then maybe like a little bit too much of this or too much salt or something like that, there's always a time after some time goes by where I go, oh, you know, got to get back into it, got to like get back on protocol. And so it kind of is this thing that fluctuates as I go. I'm always kind of looking for this goal that I see as that nutritarian goal that Dr. Fuhrman is talking about. I'm also very happy with where I am right now. So it's kind of like I don't really have that much of a, fire to like get it at this point, because I kind of am pretty happy with where I am. But there's this thing of neuroadaptation where once the brain kind of gets used to a certain place, then it starts to want the next level of progress. And so now that I'm at kind of this was always my lifetime goal weight, by the way, like 120 where I am right now was always my lifetime goal weight. And so I'm in the weird place of like, I know I like 115 as well, but my kind of lifetime goal, I'm only 5'2", so I'm pretty short. But that nutritarian goal weight, Dr. Fuhrman says, is like 105, 110. I think maybe 110 would be cool because I'm muscly too, so I'm not really sure. Got all these considerations about it. And just as I'm on my healthy journey, for me, I find myself thinking more about G-bombs. I'm thinking more about like staying on protocol for the detox and health benefits of it. And then the weight loss is just kind of cool when it can happen. It's hard to say, and it's different, probably for you guys too, it's different a lot of the times. Like sometimes I'm just busy and it comes easy, and then other times I really have to like think about it and work on it. And by the way, this is the same for everyone. It's not like, when Joan asks roughly what % of the time are you in protocol weight loss mode, it's hard to say that because there's so many events in our life. There are so many things that happen hormonally with women, especially just on a monthly basis. We have so many things that change. And menopause, I know that a lot of us are going through menopause and dealing with these massive hormonal shifts that we've never had to deal with before. And so it kind of comes, all on all these different things at all the time. And we have to really like flow with those differences that are coming across as we are going through them. And so I can stay on protocol. Like let's say I have I just thought about this for a sec. All my meals are nutritarian, like almost all my meals, maybe 1 or 2 per week are not nutritarian, right? Like we go to the vegan place or whatever. But then some days I have extra food, like I overeat a bit. I'll have too much oatmeal or have too much bread or something like that. And so it's not technically nutritarian because that would be overeating, but it was still healthy food, you know? So it's kind of, it's hard to say. Answer to that question is a little confusing. I hope that kind of makes sense. But I just want you to see that it's not an easy answer because it's a lot of different fluctuations in life, if that makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense, you guys, if you want me to clarify anymore. So Teresa says, my goal is physically feeling better because inflammation hurts for sure. So that's huge then. So you definitely want to think about especially things like the cheeseburgers or just any off-plan non-nutritarian foods. Those are greatly going to affect that inflammation, right? So you want to make sure that you're working to just reduce as much as you can. Yeah, Sandra says, I'm rooting for you, Teresa. My current goal is to break the slavery of chocolate addiction. Oh, I hear you, girl, for sure, for sure. And these kinds of things, so there's a two-part answer to this, right, Sandra? Because eating nutritarian foods helps it because you're getting all the nutrients you need, you're getting all those G-bombs, and you're healing yourself from the inside out, you're creating detox. And as you're doing that, you're also working on the mindset part too, which is so much of addiction. So much of addiction is understanding that we can change our thoughts. And when we change our thought, like even understanding that we can change our thoughts is something that most people will never know and never understand. So in the throes of addiction, especially food addiction, 90% of it comes down to thoughts and what do we think in the moment. And next week, by the way, when we talk about managing our thoughts and managing our mind and allowing urges, this is going to be one of the biggest things that I'm going to teach you guys that you can come away with in practice. So you know exactly what to do in the moment you're having those cravings. In the moment when you're having that addictive kind of stuff going on, what do you do? We're going to have some fantastic tools for that. Joanne says, so a healthy snack is not suggested, like a banana with a tablespoon of unsalted almond butter? I'm thinking a sherry-sized salad would prevent me from wanting a 3 p.m. snack. Oh, 3 p.m. snack, great question, Joanne. So 3 p.m. snack is all mental. Now, you may have some hunger, and so yes, absolutely, one of the main tenets of Eat to Live is to eat big enough meals so that you actually don't get hungry for 4 or 5 hours, yeah? So we eat 2 to 3 meals per day, and we do not snack in between. There's scientific reasons for this because we want to be in that catabolic state. We want to be in that non-digestive state in between meals so that we have time to do detox and to kind of get through that. If we're always in a digesting state, meaning we eat too frequently, our body never gets a break and it doesn't get the chance to do that work of detox. The work of detox is what creates true hunger over time and not toxic hunger. So if we can do this, 3 meals a day, no snacking thing, that's really, really goals because it's important to detox that body and get us to a place where hunger feels more comfortable, etc. And a 3 p.m. snack for me, I remember when I used to work in an office, oh my gosh, I was all about the 3 p.m. snack. And what it came down to was that was only 2 hours before work was over. And so it came down to more of just being sick of being at work than, actually needing a snack or wanting a snack or whatever. And we know that thing that I say sometimes is like hunger is not an emergency, right? So if you actually are hungry at 3 p.m., 2 things. First of all, you need to eat a bigger lunch tomorrow. And second of all, you're not going to die if you avoid it, right? So if you can get through until, dinner time, because you can just use your mind to do that, like it's okay, hunger, we're going to be okay. We're not going to die. We can get to dinner. We do that mental thing, and then tomorrow we eat a bigger lunch so that it is more satisfying. Exactly, right? We got more fiber, we got more to deal with. And if we eat, that's why we eat those massive salads, because you can't eat like a, restaurant-sized salad and imagine that you're going to be full. That just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't work. You have to have tons of plant foods in order to be able to be full. It's not like eating a piece of steak that sits in your stomach for a while and takes a bit to break down. When you have, vegetables go through us in 24 hours. Like that's a really quick transit time. So, or even less, right? Even less with some types of meals. And so you have to make sure that they're big enough so they have more time. For me, that's one of those big, huge salads. I feel full when I'm done, but I don't feel like stuffed. And I always get through 4 or 5 hours after that. So a healthy snack is not suggested. You are correct, because we want our meals to be big enough to get us through without needing a snack. Now, a healthy snack of a banana and almond butter is better than having pizza for a 3 p.m. snack, right? It's a continuum, but it's much better to not have a snack at all. And in order to do that, you have to have a bigger meal and you have to use your mindset stuff to get through it, right? Like, I'm not going to die if I get through this, right? Like, I'm just frustrated. I just don't want to be here, or I'm sick of being at work, whatever it is, right? Monica says, I love what I'm hearing you say. One of my major problems about being a nutritarian is that I end up beating up on myself when I stray from the usual no salt, no sugar, no oil. Yeah, for sure. Can we think about this as a continuum, right? Can we think about the way that I can't get my arms into there. We think about the way that we eat on a continuum. So down here you have the standard American diet with all the worst foods you can imagine. We've got lunch meats, we've got processed everything, we've got salt, sugar, oil, all that kind of stuff, fried foods. And on this end, we've got the perfectly balanced G-BOMB nutritarian diet with no salt, no sugar, no oil. It's therapeutic, it fixes everything, right? We've got this continuum of foods that we could eat. If we're not here, we're doing good, right? So how can we get closer and closer and closer and closer to this side of the scale and not beat ourselves up? Mindset, right? This is all mindset and practice. So the better and better we get it, the more we practice, the more we fall off, the more we get back on, right? The more we fall off, the more we get back on. It's just practice, 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 and everything else we just fix with our mindset, right? Like, I'm not a terrible person. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm doing the best I can. I did really great this last week. Actually, when I think about it, I'm so proud of myself for getting these meals. I'm not going to beat myself up for this. This has happened to me so many times. I'm used to it. It's totally okay. This is normal behavior. These are the thought patterns that we start to like push in. Like, we start to beat ourselves up and we go, wait a minute. I don't have to believe that about myself. I don't have to beat myself up. I'm not going to believe all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, keep getting back on track. And I know that I'll get there in the, and get there. What does that even mean? Right? Like, I don't feel perfect and I'm your teacher, right? What does get there mean? Dr. Furman? Okay, cool. Like, you try to be Dr. Furman. Yeah. I'm not, I don't have goals of being as perfect as I imagine his diet to be. I don't have goals like that because I know I'm a human. Would it be awesome? Yeah, totally. And that's what I'm working towards, but I don't beat myself up for not being that yet, right? Like, we're on this continuum, we're on this path, and we will get there as long as we just keep going and just keep coming back. Cynthia says, trying to get the G-BOMBs in. Mushrooms are challenging. Do mushrooms need to be cooked also? Yes, Cynthia, this is something from Eat to Live. You need to always cook your mushrooms because they contain a toxin called agaritine. It's a very, very small amount in raw mushrooms, but cooking removes it. And since we have mushrooms every single day, very important to cook them. I will give you a little trick about mushrooms, by the way. If you make a smoothie, for instance, oh, by the way, all you need of mushrooms every day is the size of your thumb. That's all you need every day to have the benefits. So that's the amount that you could drop into a smoothie and never taste. Cooked mushroom, one into the smoothie, you're done. That's it. That's all you need, okay? So that's one way to do it. Or chop it up really, really small and put it into a soup or something like that. That's not as easy to not taste, but smoothie is really easy. There's lots of different ways to do that, just a tiny bit, okay? And then Joanne says, I'm with you, Monica, trying to remember progress, not perfectionism, celebrating the little victories. Absolutely, 100%, you guys. I love to see how supportive you guys are of each other. This is so awesome. So Sandra says, do you pre-cook the mushrooms? So I do a few things. So my favorite thing to do right now is to, I have an air fryer, by the way, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit more in the future. Air fryers brown things a little bit more than you're supposed to on the nutritarian diet, but I don't do all the rules perfectly, right? Like, I try to reduce the amount of times I brown foods because browning creates another toxin. I can't remember what it is offhand, but it's not great for us to brown. So we want to make sure we're not using very high heat cooking methods and dry high heat cooking methods. That's why water cooking methods are better for us. But when you use an air fryer, it's like this convection thing. So the hot air circulates and kind of cooks all sides of it at once, which is really nice because it's fast. Yeah. So what I like to do, and I don't think that Dr. Furman would be against this, I take my air fryer and I buy pre-sliced mushrooms at the store. I dump them in the air fryer, just put them on for 15 minutes at like 350 or whatever the sort of factory setting is, and they're done. Then what I'll do is I'll take some of them and I'll put them into the freezer. So I have cooked mushrooms whenever I need them. And then I'll leave the rest out for the week. So I can just take a little bit every single day and be done with it. Acrylamides, that's it, Monica, thank you. Acrylamides. So that's one way that you can do it. Another thing that I used to do before I had an air fryer was I would just take a big pan and water saute a bunch of them. You can buy them sliced, or I use the cheapest ones that I have found at my stores are organic white stuffer mushrooms, like the big, huge white organic mushrooms. I find are the cheapest. I don't know if they are where you are, but those were always the cheapest. So I'd always buy those. I would just chop them up and then put them into the pan and just saute them. Put them on about medium, about 6 or something like that on my stove, 1 through 10, about a 6. And cook them kind of slowish like that, because when you cook them a little bit slow, they give off a ton of water, and then you don't need to use any water with it, and they just kind of like water saute. You can just cook them for 5-10 minutes, and then they're good enough, and that's good to go. And then, okay, that's all the questions I got. So it's 6:34 my time, which is just a few minutes over. Do you guys have any more questions? Next week, we're going to be talking about, does anyone want to go on camera and do a question at all about the models, by the way? So that was a thing I said we might be able to do today. We have time for it. We could do 1 or 2 of those if you wanted to talk a little bit about your models, or we can come back to that another time. So raise your hand if you're interested in trying to dig into one of your models and looking at what maybe worked and what maybe didn't work. So we could do that if anyone wants to do that. If you have any other questions, let me know. Either raise your hand or ask it there. Otherwise, we're going to be done. So in the meantime, so what I do is, so what we're going to do next week is we're going to talk about just a bunch more tools. Next week and the week after that is going to be more and more tools like this. I would consider these 2 things tools, protocol and deciding ahead of time, decisions ahead of time. These are tools. I'm going to give you a bunch more tools. And when I say tools, I mean like what I give to my clients when I'm teaching them how to lose weight and how to do it for good, right? So we've got all these tools, but we also have the model. So we're going to do tools next week and the week after that. And then last week, what I think we're going to do, I'm not sure yet, but what I think we're going to do is just do the model. We're just going to work on more models and figure this out and answer. I'm going to answer all your questions that are left and all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for being here, Grace. And then Mary says, how do you get enough protein with just half a cup of beans? Great question. All plants have protein, like all plant foods have protein in them. So the protein is not an issue. When we have a nice varied diet full of like greens, by the way, are one of the highest protein foods that you can eat. If you have broccoli, like if you take 100 calories of broccoli, 100 calories of steak, 100 calories of broccoli has more protein in it than the steak does. Now, 100 calories of broccoli is a lot more food than 100 calories of steak, okay? But it does have a lot more protein. So you're going to be getting plenty of protein in your foods as long as you have a lot of variety. You know, you can't just be eating one, like fruit. Like fruit, for instance, is not enough protein. You couldn't have a full diet of fruit. You'd get less than 10% of protein on that diet. But anything else that you eat, especially if you get nuts and seeds in there as well, and the beans and all this good stuff, anything else that you eat, you're going to get plenty of protein. All of these foods have the amino acids that we need, including all the greens. They have all the essential amino acids. They're just in differing amounts. So the idea is that when we eat a plant, and this is really interesting too, when we eat a plant-based diet that is varied and has lots of different things in it, if one plant food doesn't have a lot of a certain amino acid, what happens is, this is so fascinating. As the body detoxes every day, the body is always detoxing and recycling cells, taking care of cellular waste, metabolic waste, and all these kinds of things. As the body's doing all this, it's literally taking its cells and recycling them. It will take cells from like dead cells in the body, from dead human matter, right? Muscles and tissues and all these different kinds of cells, and it will take amino acids from there and complete what we didn't get from our food. Fascinating. So that's why this myth about incomplete protein and not having enough protein, which was disproven back when the woman first wrote the book. I think she wrote it in the 80s, which she said that that you don't get enough protein from plant foods and things like this. When she wrote that book, it was called like Diet for a Better Earth or Better Planet. I can't remember what it was called, but she made this assertion. And then quickly after that, she recanted that assertion, and because like people pounced on her or something and said, that's not true. Like that's actually not true about protein, that you have to have, specific meals each day. the body actually recycles so much of its own proteins and its own amino acids and kind of just completes everything itself. So as long as you're having a good varied amount of plant proteins during the day, yeah, diet for a small planet, that's it. As long as you're having enough of these foods every single day, like just variety, you're getting enough calories and you're doing different foods, you know, every once in a while, you are going to get plenty. You will get so much actually. For a woman my size, about 120 pounds, I only need about 44, 45 grams of protein per day. That is so easy to get on a nutritarian diet. And that's even, that's like double the actual amount that we need. Like the RDA, the recommended daily intake, or allotment or whatever, is 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, but the nutrition facts label will say 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So 0.8 is actually about 45 grams of protein for my weight. Totally easy to get on a nutritarian diet, on a plant-based diet. And the issue is just sort of these protein companies and these shake companies that are, you know, the meat companies, the dairy companies that sell protein for a living, telling us that we need more, that we need 100 grams or more per day, which is protein overload. And it's actually pretty toxic for the body. When we're getting the right amount, the body can do exactly what it needs with it to create to recreate those amino acids into proteins and rebuild stuff as we go, and we just get plenty. So great question about protein. I love answering that one because it's just so fun once you really know the facts behind it, right? Okay, so Sandra says, should we limit working out when starting this weight loss protocol? I'm getting back to my exercise routine as well. Great question. Yes, in short, and here's why. Exercise confounds the problem. Teresa says her friend is in the hospital from low protein. Not. Yeah, it doesn't happen. That's not a thing that happens unless you're in one of those very third world countries that you're literally just starving. We don't have that problem in this country because we can get plenty of protein from these wonderful plant foods and from, you know, our over protein saturated standard American diet anyhow. But so exercise, what I always say to clients in the beginning is when you're starting out, don't add in exercise because it confuses things. And here's why. Let's say you exercise 100 calories off. Now your body is going to want to make up those 100 calories. That's how the primitive brain works. It's going to be like, uh-oh, we kind of like walked around a lot or whatever. We've got to make up for this. So it's going to give you extra hunger and extra signals to eat in order to make up for that 100 calories. You're doing that plus having toxic hunger, plus working on the mindset, plus doing all these other things. There's a lot of things for the body to process at once in order for us to kind of like get to our goals. I just think it's like layering another set of cravings or another set of hunger on top of it in the beginning. So I often will say to clients, like, wait to work out for a little while till you got the protocol figured out at least, okay? I think it's best if you wait to, like, if you have a significant amount of weight to lose, I think it's best to wait for a while. I really want you to get into the habit of understanding the food part. And in my life coaching program, we're always talking about constraining focus. So we constrain down to just one thing at a time. We do this on purpose because this is a monumental shift that we're doing. We are actually changing a full lifestyle. So starting with food, when we can just constrain to the food part and figure that out first, we'll have a lot better connection with our hunger signals and understanding what's happening with hunger in society. We kind of keep that pretty simple, right? Then once we've gotten on a really good weight loss path, or we really understand what we need to eat in order to lose weight, that's when we start exercising. Then we go, oh, I am a little bit hungry. I'm going to need to eat a little bit more. But the body is always going to want to make up for those lost calories. So if you're losing calories because you're eating less, that's how you lose weight anyways on Eat to Live, and you're also losing calories because you're exercising, you're adding double calorie loss there, right? And it sounds like it would be good, but actually it just confuses things because it makes us more hungry and it makes us kind of just a little bit more confused in the beginning. So that's kind of the answer to it. I'm not going to tell you not to exercise. Exercise is amazing. If you want to do something, I think weights are the best thing to do in the beginning. Dr. Fuhrman has some fantastic recommendations for what type of exercise to do in general in the end of the book, The End of Heart Disease. Fantastic recommendations. In a nutshell, it's a little bit of weight training here. It's a little bit of jogging, light jogging. Maybe he says like half an hour to an hour, up to 2.5 hours per week. little bit of high intensity intervals, so maybe 3 or 4 minutes of getting your heart rate really high during the week, a couple of times a week. Those are kind of his recommendations. And then, you know, definitely strength training if you can. So those are kinds of things you want to think about for exercises if you're going to do it, but just also consider that whatever you add in is going to make it a little bit more difficult on the weight loss part just for a little while, okay? Teresa says, I started yoga at work and you feel great, 60-minute class twice a week. Yeah, yoga is a fantastic place to start, but also keep in mind yoga does burn calories. So when you start yoga, you're going to burn some calories. You're probably going to get hungrier either that evening or the next day or even the next day. And sometimes we don't even notice until that next day. We're like, oh, wow, I'm really craving today. I'm really hungry. And then we don't realize it was because of the exercise. It can be even the next day after that we are coming back from that particular weight loss and we don't really see where those cravings are coming from, and they came from the exercise. It came from the calorie loss and that exercise. So something to keep in mind. I'm not going to discourage you from exercising because I think exercising is great. When I first started out, I just walked. I just did some walking, but you also have to keep in mind, if you're going to walk, you're going to burn calories. So your body's going to want to make that up. It doesn't matter what type of exercise you do. You're still going to burn some calories. So your body's going to want to make up for that. Okay. And Sandra says she's just walking. So that's great. You can start there, but just know you will be burning calories. Okay. All right, I think we're good. I think I've answered all the questions for today. Next couple of weeks, we're gonna be just going through some more tools. So what I want you guys to do for next week is to start working on your protocols, okay? Start working on figuring out what quantities of what you need to eat in order to make yourself feel good. You can maybe try one of my challenges. If you already have one, you can start working through those, or you can join the challenges coming up in October. That's gonna be going on sale, I think, in a couple of weeks. So you can do that, or right now what you could do is start to create protocols just based on recipes from Dr. Fuhrman's website or recipes you've seen on my website or my what I eat in a day videos on YouTube. Those are all protocols as well, just like my challenges. So you can get a bunch of protocols there as well. Any what I eat in a day is set up for weight loss. So feel free to try those as well. And then just start tweaking with whatever works for you and your hunger and satiety, and just keep in mind all that kind of stuff. And most importantly, plan ahead. Make your decisions ahead of time and do all that 24 hours in advance. Write it down. Use your prefrontal cortex and plan some exceptions, okay? So Teresa says, please share on the Facebook. Yeah, that would be really, really good if you guys share. Let's talk more in there, right? Like I do a little bit of talking in there, and I would love if you guys would post once a day or something. Post what you're eating. And then that way we can kind of like look and see what everyone else is eating. Maybe you guys can post some of my what I eat in a day videos. I'll try to do that too. And you guys can get some ideas there. And let's just talk about, and if you haven't joined yet, some of you haven't even joined yet, make sure you join in on the Facebook group so we can get some activity going. Whatever you guys put into that Facebook group is what you're going to get out of it. Okay. So use it while you have it. All right. Okay, guys, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for being such an amazing audience with these questions are so fantastic. Thank you. Feel free to ask me any questions by email or in the Facebook group or whatever, and we'll talk more about this with tons of awesome tools on next week as well, okay? So have a good week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.